our minds aren't always on hunting because it's hot. It's not hot in the fall, and we're busy with other summer activities and everything. But one thing that should be consistent is picking up our bows and preparing for fall, because preparation, in my mind at least, starts now. It starts in the spring and summer months, and not August 31st or the first week in September when you happen to think about busting your bow back out. So.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down. Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm Sam Thrash with Fall Obsession. I'm your podcast host for this week's Fall Obsession podcast episode. Thank you guys for joining. Our podcast is driven by Ridge Rock Hunt Company. I'll talk about them at the conclusion in our sponsor segment. Back on here with a gentleman who's becoming no stranger to our podcast at this point. We're having some pretty good conversations on here these days. Mike Behrens is my guest again. Welcome back, Mike.
Thanks for having me again.
Oh yeah, you made the journey over here this time.
I did. Yeah, another long, arduous journey.
Yeah. So I don't know if we've come flat out and said it on any of the 3 episodes you've already been a part of, but if you're a new listener or if you didn't pick up on it, Mike and I are neighbors. So that's how we've gotten to know each other and find a mutual love for hunting in the outdoors and other things. So
about 150 yards away, roughly. 150, 175, give or take.
Somewhere in there. Mike lives across the street from me. You got more land than I do, so you got the whitetails.
I sent you that picture this morning.
Yeah. Nice buck starting to already spread some antler growth, so it's looking pretty good over there.
I was kind of surprised too, because the 2 that were in that picture, I think it's a 2.5 and a 3.5.
Yeah.
And they're way bigger than they were last year. I mean, exponentially bigger.
Oh yeah. For sure. So exciting times. I hope everybody out there is starting to see some growth and some potential coming to their woods with their whitetails right now. It's fun to watch your trail cams and everything. But one thing that we are here to talk about today, and if you've listened to the podcast before for any length of time, you undoubtedly have picked up that I am very passionate and big into archery. I love archery, and that is where I can really nerd out and get into some stuff. And when I texted you wanting to record an episode, what I had on my mind was, I don't know what we'll end up calling it, but kind of an archery Q&A style type thing, mainly just breaking some stuff down, going through some equipment and some stuff that archers and folks might want to think about this time of year, relevant to right now. In the summer months, our minds aren't always on hunting because it's hot. It's not hot in the fall, and we're busy with other summer activities and everything. But one thing that should be consistent is picking up our bows and preparing for fall, because preparation, in my mind at least, starts now. It starts in the spring and summer months, and not August 31st or the first week in September when you happen to think about busting your bow back out. So we got your rig over here, and you are entering your 2nd year, I believe, in your archery journey, and learned a lot in your 1st year, for sure.
Yeah. It was, every day was my first day there for a while. It just seemed like every time I talked to you, it was, you were giving me the idiot's guide to archery basics. So there was that.
That was not my intention.
No, but it worked. There's just things I didn't know. I didn't know anything about it. It's a new weapon system.
Yeah.
And, so coming from the rifle side of things, I think we touched on this, that first podcast that I did with you.
Yeah, I think it's 136 or something for our listeners, but yeah.
But yeah, you came to me the same way I came to you about archery. You come to me with the rifle, and I was like, hey, can you help me out with this? Yeah. So we went ahead and did it, and that's kind of the same thing you are to me with the archery stuff. It's like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing with this. And, quick fix, it's like, oh, got it.
Yeah, the first time that I met you, I was standing on your front porch with an AR-15 in my hand, so asking you to fix this.
Which I was more than happy to do because I
Yeah.
got to put my hands on another rifle.
Yeah, no, it worked out pretty good. So that's where it all started. But you been shooting at all?
A little bit. Haven't really gotten to do much with the rifles. Obviously, with chickens, man. It's all about chickens right now.
Yeah. I hear you.
So no, I ended up. I had the intention of going out and doing some turkey stuff, but that never panned out because that one bird that showed up just didn't want to hang out ever. So that never really materialized, and I didn't have anywhere else to really go to do anything. So I was kind of focused on the house. So I mean, that's really been taking up all the time. I did shoot a little with the bow in the run up to the little hog overnighter that we had. But that was really the last time I got out there and did anything with it. I figure when it gets about 110, 112 degrees, that's when I'll get that wild hair up and go out and do some shooting because, it's nice and cool
Yeah.
at that point in time.
Best time of the year for sure.
So, yeah, and then, of course, like we were talking about in the camo episode, you go out and you got to practice how you play.
Mm-hmm.
So what better time to put layers of clothing on than when it's 110 degrees outside? It's perfect.
Yeah.
So now it'll happen probably, starting July, August, I'll start doing that run up and everything, and we'll get things zeroed. And then that way, when the temperature change comes, it's just a confirmation on the rifles and a confirmation on the bows.
Yeah.
And then it's just repetition practice just to keep everything fresh. So
For sure. How are you feeling about your setup?
it's still basic, very, very basic. So one of the things I intended to do this year was get into a little bit more on the sight. Right now I'm just still shooting that 5-pin sight, and it's the stock sight that came with the bow. I mean, it worked well enough,
Yeah.
but I did want to get something different. I wanted to get that single pin. We had talked about a couple of different brands to go with, but still want to get the single pin sight. And for me personally, it's easier to make it work in my brain. I have a very small infantry brain. So 1 pin, nice and easy, make your adjustment, fire. It's just like a rifle in that respect.
Yeah.
So it's an easy transition, easy correlation.
Yeah.
So that, at least that's what makes sense in my head. But I do want to get that single pin sight and just run the adjustments on it and go from there on that. I think eventually it'll have to get restrung. I do a lot of rubbing on the forearm, so I have the guard and everything too. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to matter where I put my hand, and that's probably one of those things where it'll take 30 seconds for you to go, hey, do it this way. Oh, okay, cool.
Well, pick it up. Let's look at it. This episode might be more beneficial for those that are watching the podcast video. I know you might be listening on Spotify or somewhere else, but I don't know if it'd be easier for you to come back behind you this way. But whenever, yeah, so you're pushing in right there. So I don't know if y'all can see it on the video, but Mike has his hand rotated at his knuckles are almost at like a 45-degree angle coming off the side right there. So, and not wrapping your fingers around the front is important with your grip so that you're not torquing your bow and you're pushing back into that arm bone. If you're buff and work out like Mike does, obviously you got that forearm.
That's what's always catching.
Yeah.
So, but you can tell right here where it's constantly hitting that guard, it's starting to fray a little bit.
So I know for me, like, extend your arm again. Do you fully extend when you shoot?
Yes.
Like that? So I know for me, one thing that I had to, and at this point, it would feel weird if you were to transition to something like this, but I know I relax my arm a little bit when I'm at full draw. I don't lock it out because I don't have forearms as massive as yours, but I'm double jointed in my left elbow.
Kick in anyway.
So if I fully extend, it's almost this part of my elbow right here that is sticking out and not my forearm. So I have always had to relax my elbow just slightly to bring that in whenever I shoot. And that's something that you have to play around with, obviously,
Yeah.
because it could even translate into as much as a half inch on your draw length, for all you know. You don't know until you start playing around
Right.
with it.
And that's a concern too, just running that through my head. If I'm like, when I draw back, I mean, it's all the way.
Yeah.
And that's on the release that I have too, which is a different type of release than that. I have the old wrap around, Velcro around the wrist release.
So, I mean, nothing wrong with that either. Like, the release comes down to personal preference is ultimately what it is, and transitioning certainly from a wrist strap to something like that is a big transition. It's a completely different mentality. It took me a lot of adjusting when I did, but at this point it's second nature. And
Right.
if I keep a wrist strap, like when I go hunting, I keep a wrist strap in my bow case in case something happens to that one, mainly because I'm broke and I can't afford 2 of those because those are expensive, man. Yeah. But I keep my previous wrist strap in my case in case, you always want to have a backup. But anytime that I might happen, thankfully it's hardly ever, it honestly, the only time I put that on is just for kicks and giggles at this point because I want to, but it's foreign to me. I mean, I know how it works. I know how to shoot with it, but it feels foreign, So, and I mean, that's how it would be with anything that you get comfortable with for a while. It would feel foreign to you going to that now, so. But
that's something to play with. I'll have to get out there and do it.
And they always, I always say friends don't let friends shoot their bows. That's one of my rules, but I'd be lying if I held to that every time. And certainly I don't think, like, with accessories and stuff, like, I mean, I encourage guys to play around with, if you got a buddy, me in this sense, and you ever want to play around with this thing, I'm the kind of guy that'll let you, because that's the only time that you're going to get to even see if it's something that you like. Or if you don't have a buddy, if you're listening and you don't have a buddy that, for example, shoots a thumb release or something like that, pretty much any archery shop you go to will let you play with them and try different ones and stuff and see if it's even something that you want to do before you walk out the door. If they don't, then go find a different archery shop.
Yeah.
But,
well, on the cheap end, those things are what, $60 to $70, and that's on the cheap end.
Yeah, you don't want to buy a cheap one of those. So this one from Scott, which Scott has come out, this version is still not even made. This is the X's Core that I'm shooting, and like I said, they don't even manufacture this exact one anymore. There's been 2 or 3 new generations of this since then, I believe, but I'm so comfortable with it that's what I run. But yeah, for a premium on something like these, 1 to 2 bills or something like that is typically what you're going to be looking at, which for a release, a lot of guys are like, man, I could go buy a nice wrist strap for $60. And yeah, you could.
Can.
You absolutely could.
But with the wrist straps, like we were talking about this last summer too.
Yeah.
The first one I had, all the seams, they just ripped out.
Yeah.
And then that was within 3-4 weeks. And that was just practicing. I mean, I had no idea, the tension on that and the quality of the product that I was using. I mean, they're okay, but when you're maxing out your draw weight and everything and shooting a bunch of arrows every day, that wear and tear on those threads, it comes through. So, the quick fix with my handy little workshop of horrors in the garage, I ended up putting those rivets in there. And I put 3 rivets in that strap, and that thing had lasted all year long. I mean, every arrow I shot. I mean, I think one of the rivets popped out, but there was 3 of them in there. The other 2 were holding just fine. I probably could have made it work with 1 rivet. But riveting that just for a little added strength, you can get away with getting something that's a little bit cheaper if you have equipment like that laying around the house, or you got a buddy that has that equipment laying around the house. You can probably get away with something a little bit cheaper like that and reinforce it. The only thing at this point that's going to wear out on it is the Velcro. Right. And that's coming due. So that release that I had last year, that's probably going to go away. And I'll have to get another one.
I definitely with the thumb releases, I encourage guys to not cheap out. If you're going to save for one, save a little bit longer if that's what it comes down to, and buy a nice one, mainly just because like with anything, you buy a cheaper product, it's made with cheaper products and cheaper springs, cheaper screws. You're going to have issues sooner with something like that. That Scott, for example, knock on wood, but I believe this is like season 7 or 8 with that release right there, and I've had 0 problems with it. With a wrist strap, you mentioned the Velcro. I know with my wrist straps, I have a buckle, and I encourage you guys, if you're going to buy a wrist strap, to buy a buckle, just for that very reason. Velcro, especially if you shoot as often as you did, that stuff wears out pretty quick, or it can get hung up on your other clothing or stuff in the blind.
And it stretches, it flexes.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the other ones will too. A buckle will too, especially if you have a leather band and stuff. Yeah, that's going to stretch out too. But
that is not going to stretch or flex, though.
It better not.
Well, and there's a difference too between, you look at all these little tiny screws in here and all these small mechanical parts. Those are made out of steel versus aluminum. You can tell a difference. That aluminum is going to start to warp over time, especially with that tension. And obviously with that $60, $70 version, you're looking at some aluminum parts in there, whether they're going to say it or not.
Right.
It's in there. So, you get what you pay for with like anything. If you want the quality, pay for the quality. That said, there's some out there that just buyer beware.
Yeah.
There's always that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you're on a budget or something like that, or like just starting out like I was last year, it's just like, I don't know what I'm getting. I'll just get this. And then I learned a hard lesson real early, and I'm like, okay, well, they replaced it for free because it's a defect, or that's what they said. To me, it was overuse, but neither here nor there. They replaced it for free, so it didn't cost me anything. Popped 3 rivets in it, lasted all year. Good enough.
Yeah.
So now I know what I actually want, so I can go out and spend the money on that. And that's kind of the key component too, is whatever you get initially, you're not gonna stick with, by and large. I mean, you're always going to be changing your stuff. I mean, you saw my 6.5 Creedmoor. That thing looks nothing like it did when you first saw it.
Yeah.
It's completely different. Everything's changed.
In the year that I've known you, it's changed. But,
so,
yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, things are going to change. You're going to see a different need for it. We had kind of identified a need that, predator control was more of a pressing issue, and that was something that particular gun was more suited for. So we modified that into more of a predator control rifle, long distance. That way we could take out pigs, coyotes, whatever was out there at night and not have to be close.
Yeah.
So trying to get close to a coyote is next to impossible. Unless you're driving through town.
Yeah, unless you're unprepared. Same thing with a deer. You can hunt all day and drive back to camp, and there's 6 does standing next to your camper. So been there.
So, and then the other thing too is looking at the arrows.
I was gonna say, I'm digging your orange and black fall obsession colors here on your arrow. So I like those.
Well, it's kind of, my high school was orange and black. Springtown's orange and black. You guys are orange and black, and I just kind of like orange and black. So
they go well together. They complement each other. The bowstrings used to kind of be orange. Now they're a little yellowish, but it used to match. So, and then, the tiger stripe, it was just that I didn't want just a big orange blob on there. So I got the one with the patterning. But again, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, okay, what's a durable arrow that's going to handle what I'm going to do with it? It's not going to shatter into my forearm when I let it go. That was everybody's, their initial fear is, at least mine was, the arrow's going to explode. And the guy's like, well, if you get the wrong grain, yeah. So he helped me out, got the right size, and I was like, well, I'm not really sure what I'm doing yet. So, cheaper's not necessarily better, but let's keep it conservative here, buddy. Yeah. And so he gives me these X5 Envies, blackout, and then I guess it's a knockoff of one of the other name brands. It's their reject arrows or something. Yeah. So, they might have some kind of a little, not a defect, but a visual issue or something, or whatever the case may be. So sometimes it can be a visual thing, but most of the time it's when they make arrows, they spin test them, and the arrows have a rating on them for like what they've been, how they've performed on a spin test, or I guess I should say they have like these, for example, I run the Easton Axis, the 5mm shafts, and on these right here they have a decal on the bottom that says Match Grade Pro Series. So that's Easton's version of saying, we have spin tested these arrows, we have put these arrows through the ringer, and they are the most perfect, straightest, most balanced shaft out of any shaft that we manufacture. So basically, like, they'll roll them off the line and they'll start spin testing them, and the ones that perform at this level, they'll be like, all right, we're gonna sell these as the Pro Series match grades. And then the ones that are still meet the standard of the Easton Axis, which I forget what the exact measurement is, but it's like a .001 or a .003. If they're like a .001, and I could be blowing smoke up my butt. It's been a minute since I looked at arrow stuff.
Like I know.
I know, but somebody watching is going to probably call me out on it, and that's fine. But, you know, those ones that meet that perfection standard are turned into this version, basically, and the ones that meet the standard but aren't the perfection standard, if you will, they still get sold as just the plain old Axis arrow. So most manufacturers, whether it's having a Pro Series version or having a knockoff version for the lesser quality, that is pretty common in the industry.
Yeah. So I'm running the knockoffs right now, and of course, after shooting the first few arrows, again, I learned a lot of lessons doing stupid stuff. 70-pound draw, shooting through a bale of straw. What could possibly go wrong? I had to refletch real quick.
Yeah.
So I learned how to refletch arrows.
Yeah.
Like within 2 weeks of owning a bow. So that was cool. Ended up liking it. So yeah, I started switching all of them over to the black and orange.
Yeah.
And then of course, you know, the more you watch, the more you see the cool little toys and stuff. So I started getting the light up nocks and putting those in there because it just makes sense if you're going to go out and shoot stuff at night.
Yeah.
If you're shooting pigs at night, that's, you kind of want to know where they go. Or in the case of my bonehead deer hunting story from my first ever bow kill, that was a necessary thing too, in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, mistakes were made. So the other thing too is arrow weight. And I know nothing about how to balance arrows and all that. So we got a nice long road ahead of us.
Strap up, buckle in, here we go. So one number that's always consistent on your shafts somewhere is the one that's visible to you right there, 340. I have the same number on mine, 340. What a lot of guys misinterpret that as is grains or weight. That number refers to the spine, the stiffness of the arrow. And majority of manufacturers out there, the smaller the number, the lesser the number, the stiffer the arrow. So I think there's two manufacturers, Carbon Express, and there's one other manufacturer that slips my mind, that go the opposite direction, I believe. If it's a higher number, I believe it's a stiffer spine. They're different. If you're buying those arrows, check with your dealer first. Make sure that I'm not lying to you there, but I'm pretty sure it was Carbon Express. Neither here nor there. So a 340 spine, like, it's rated for kind of that 60 to 65, 70 pound range. You start getting up into the 75 to 80 pound range, you're probably going to want more like a 300 spine, a stiffer arrow, because as these arrows fly through the air, what we can't see with the naked eye is they're doing this. They're flexing as they fly through the air. So if you have an arrow that has a weaker spine and already has a lot of give in it, and then you run it through a high-powered, high-poundage bow, well, that arrow's not stiff enough to compensate for that flexing. So then your arrow is going to start doing this. The whole shaft is going to start moving instead of it just flexing in the air, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to find the right spine, and then because of that, again, if you shoot a weak enough arrow through a high poundage bow, that's when you start hearing the horror stories of arrows blowing up on people and them getting carbon in their hand and, you know, whatnot. So Again, 340, anything over 60 pounds, really, if you're shooting that consistently, that's kind of where I like to stay. And even if you're like getting into bow hunting, because like we've talked about, it's expensive, it's an investment. If you're getting into bow hunting and you're wanting to, if you're starting out at like 55 or 58 pounds or something like that, and you meet the criteria for a 400 spine, a weaker spine basically, but you have the goal like, hey, I'm going to shoot every day, I want to be consistent with this next year, I'm hoping to be pulling 65, 70 pounds. Well, I would be like, if I was the salesman selling you that stuff, which been there, I worked in a bow shop, I would probably be like, if that's your goal, I can put you in a 340 spine if you don't want to have to buy new arrows again next year, because arrows are expensive. Right. So like that can be done. You just can't go the other way. You can't shoot something that's lesser than what your bow needs. The weight, they measure these things in grains per inch, and sometimes there's a marking on the shaft or on the label. Sometimes there's not. Manufacturers aren't really required to put that on there. It doesn't look like either of ours.
I kept the label off the box just because that's, I'm that guy. So like all the equipment I've ever bought, I at least, if I don't keep the whole box, I tear off that one piece with the data on it.
So there's at least a GPI rating on it for what the grains per inch is, and that obviously will contribute to translating what your total arrow weight is. A dealer or a salesperson, they can't put a box of arrows in front of you and tell you your arrow's going to weigh this much. This is what your estimated kinetic energy coming out of your bow is going to be. This is going to be a super heavy arrow for you or a super light arrow for you. The reason they can't do that is because your arrow's not built. Your arrows need to be cut. I say yours, everybody. Your arrows need to be cut to the right length for you and your bow. You can tell a guy I'm a 28 or a 29 inch draw, whatever you might be, but he hasn't measured an arrow shaft out on your bow with your arrow rest and everything. And then there's also preferences with that. Like some guys, if they put their arrow in their bow, they want that arrow to be cut mid-shelf, like in between the end of the riser and the arrow rest. Some guys want their broadhead completely sticking out in front of everything at full draw, just for peace of mind. Some guys want it as close as you can possibly get it. So until you find what you're comfortable with, or they cut something for you there, well, nothing's been established as far as what your GPI is for the arrow. And then you got to think about your fletchings, your wraps, nocks, lighted nocks. All those contribute to the overall arrow weight, and then whatever you put on the front end contributes, which most guys run pretty standard is a 100 grain field point.
I kept everything the same, and 100 grain broadhead because I train with the 100 grain field points.
I do 100 grain on everything. I'm not trying to kill anything crazy or stupid big or anything like that, so I don't have
yet anyway.
Not yet. Yeah, the day might come, but I have no reason to go to a 125, but some guys do. And then if you want more weight out front, if you want to pack a little bit more of a punch upon impact, you can put more weight out front. They make weighted inserts that have more weights that are embedded in the tip of your arrow when you put that insert in it. Or some arrow manufacturers make like an insert collar, which like goes on the outside and comes around. There's still a piece going inside the shaft, but then there's a collar that comes out on the outside, and it would stick out a little bit farther than this field point does right here, and then you screw your point on the top of that, so it just looks like this big bulky thing on the front of your arrow. Another way to add more weight out front. Again, if you're wanting to pack more of a punch. The biggest thing that I tell people with when they're building arrows, because I went through phases as I was developing my archery knowledge and everything, in the bow shop and stuff. And I went through a phase where I wanted a lightweight bow, so I bought a carbon bow. I wanted to shoot speed out of this lightweight bow, and I could think less about kinetic energy or getting a pass through. So what I do, I built the lightest weight arrows that I could do, still a 340 spine, but they were like a 5 grain per inch arrow, which is stupid light, so they weighed nothing, and they flew everywhere. But when they got to their target at anything past 30-40 yards, there wasn't a whole lot there to punch it through. at that point. So then my mentality changed. And I was like, all right, I'm going super heavy. So what I do, I built heavy arrows. I got a different bow. I weighted out a heavy bow. My bow in the hand, rigged out, weighed like 6.7 pounds, which for a bow is heavy. Yours sitting right there is probably 4 something, pushing 5 maybe.
Yeah, it's not terribly
Which
heavy.
people think, well, that's only a couple pounds difference. A couple pounds when you're holding it out here in front of you makes a lot of difference.
Well, for reference, that's essentially an AR pistol.
Yeah.
You're holding an AR, or even a standard AR, 16-inch barrel.
Yeah.
That's roughly 7 pounds, depending on how you have it built up. I mean, some are heavier rails and stuff like that, but yeah, between 6 and 7 pounds is your standard rifle.
Yeah.
So you hold that rifle out with one hand, and tell me how easy it is to hold that steady. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
That's the bow that I had, right? And so those arrows, they packed a punch, but I got tired of going to the range and shooting 20, 30 arrows and being gassed and done. Like, I don't want to shoot anymore. This isn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm the happiest I've ever been because I've met myself in the middle. I have a bow that probably, if you weighed it compared to most other guys' bows, it would be a little bit heavier, but it's not crazy stupid, like 7+ pounds. And then I've taken that and I've capitalized with my stabilizers as far as where my weight is, opposed to just how heavy the whole thing is altogether, and that's really helped me a lot with my balance. And then my arrows, like this arrow is a 435 grain arrow in front of us right now, which that traveling through that bow is pushing around, I think 303 was the last time I chroned it, and it's producing around 80 some odd pounds of kinetic energy per square inch upon impact. So that right there will kill anything that I want to kill in North America, and I'm perfectly content with it. I've had these arrows now, actually still have one from the original batch 8 years ago when I built my first set. Funny story, I'm picky about my arrows, and not superstitious, but I guess you could call it superstitious if you wanted to. Like, I have my killing arrow. Like, I got 2 arrows, mainly because I lost my killing arrow at one point in time. But I have 2 arrows that I killed all my animals with, and one's got like 6 or 7 kills, the other's got 7 or 8 kills off of one arrow, because I keep getting pass-throughs, which is what I want, right? Well, the oldest arrow that I have in my arsenal, I call it my pig arrow because it's the oldest one, right? If that arrow gets stuck in a shoulder and runs off and I never find it again, or it breaks, I'm not going to be butthurt about it. It's not a pro series match grade, but I can't get rid of it. I keep getting pass-throughs on pigs too.
Which is saying something.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, as far as pig hunting, I will probably always use these.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to... I mean, let's be real. It's a feral pig.
And I know some guys like are probably super picky about it, and everything should be the same no matter what. I get that. I appreciate that. But to me, just down here, as frequent as I have a pig walk in front of me during deer season, I'm like, I got to have an arrow with just a broadhead that's been used 2 or 3 times already, an arrow that's already run through some
you're right.
animals.
Yeah, I mean, this arrow right here is... I mean, well, you can reuse the broadheads, so I mean, it's not really count that unless you break something on it. But the odds of breaking that broadhead are fairly slim, but it does happen. But you're looking at what, maybe $6 for the shaft. So if I snap a shaft on this, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not real worried about that. That's different than $12, $15, $18 a shaft. That starts to hurt, makes you cry a little bit.
Yeah. This and that's where these get me, so funny thing, I came into, and if he listens to this he'll laugh, I came into these match grade pro series by accident because I always looked at them like, oh man, those are too expensive, I'm not going to buy those. The Axis are already expensive enough, at whatever they are, 60, 70 a half dozen or whatever. And I go to the shop one year, and I'm like, hey, I need to get some more Axis made, and it's Kyle, the shop manager, my normal guy that's there, and he's like, all right, I'll fix you up, I'll get you what you need. And he makes these up, and I never think twice about it. He doesn't say anything, and he goes to ring me up, and he tells me what the cost is, and I'm like, did you make me a half dozen or a full dozen? Like, what are we doing here? He's like, oh, I gave you the Pro Series match grade. And I was like, did I ask for that? He said, I just figured you wanted the best. Well, guess what, Kyle? Thanks, because now all I freaking buy is the Pro Series match grade. So
as long as that's the whole thing. Obviously, they're durable. They last. They're not going to break. You're getting good penetration with them.
And that's the thing, man. Like, you can upgrade your stuff to a point, but there gets a point where it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type deal. Like I said, I've been running the same arrow now for 7-8 seasons. That bow, like all the accessories on that bow, the bow is a different one. The bow's about to be replaced again, but all the accessories, when the new one comes in, it's gonna be the third different bow that all those accessories are on. Not because I'm trying to be conservative or save money or save gear or whatever. It's just I don't have a reason to change it anything else. I don't. It works. It's still relevant. So
and these will not be. I mean, I'm gonna use these until they're all cracked or whatever.
Well, yeah, you get your use out of them for
cracked
sure.
one of these. That was over the summer. I mean, I wasn't very far into it. And I'm like, oh, all right. I'm already breaking these.
Did you Robin Hood or what you do?
I don't know what I did, but it was back on the back side of it down here, and I think I might have hit it with another arrow coming in. But yeah, it's got a nice long crack going all the way down the side right here.
Yeah, you probably nick the knock or something on the back side normally. So.
Saw that and I was like, okay, well, I'm hoping that was not just, a flaw in the carbon, because that would really unnerve me. But yeah, I kind of looked at everything and I was like, this is probably what happened.
Yeah.
So it wasn't terrible. It didn't freak me out, obviously, because I still use them. So, but I mean, overall, they do the job. They're fine. It is what it is. As far as these, off brands go, but it's not something that I'm going to stick with indefinitely. It's just, that was to get me started, and kind of goes back to the whole thing where you don't know what you don't know until you start playing with it. So
and
don't blow the bank trying to get it perfect out the gate, because you're not going to.
And I know you mentioned this in 136 when we were just telling your story kind of from last year, and you talked about how you didn't know anything about archery going into it, so you did what every American hunter does and goes to Cabela's, to which, nothing against the big box stores, but they're big box stores.
Yeah.
And depending on who's in your tech room, sometimes depends on, what you walk out with.
Yeah. I think I got fairly lucky.
You did, and I was going to bring it around to that, in that not just with what you were set up with, but then what you've made out of it. You started with a basic setup, but you have made that basic setup pretty much, you've taken it to its full potential, essentially, as far as what that thing can do for you. So which is great.
Well, and the thing that I'm missing right now, like we had talked about arrow rests and stuff like that. I don't really know anything about arrow rests, so that's a discussion for another day. But we talked about the sight. The sight will get replaced, probably not this year just yet. It'll probably be next year, because of things we talked about off camera that are possibly going to happen. So there's that, and then we also have to look at the stabilizer stuff too. I mean, where balance, weight, all those types of things. Like, I don't know anything about how a bow is supposed to behave even after shooting one all year. To me, it's just like I'm still in that rigid state where like I don't want it to move. When I loose a string, I don't want it to move. Well, that's not really reality. It's supposed to, fall forward, things like that. It's supposed to move. It's not supposed to just death grip on it.
Right.
So those types of things, I gotta figure it out.
Yeah. It's not like a gun where you fire off a round, and again, you're the gun guy, I'm not, but you fire off a round and you're promptly refocusing and preparing to fire off another round. So you want that stability, right?
Tight tolerance, very stable. You want to be really quick reacquisition for a follow-up shot. You're not going to get that with a bow.
If you're shooting a bow like that, I want to meet you and I want to have you on this podcast. So please send me a message. But I mean, not to dive off into the weeds super crazy about it or anything, but talking about the stabilizers and bow behavior, and tying it into what you're talking about as far as upgrading your sight, wanting to go to a single pin sight. If you go to a single pin, you're obviously going to have a dial of some sort, or a rotator, a slide, whatever it translates to, depending on the brand that you get. And typically, especially if you go with durability, you're going to have metal up here, which will last you forever, as this sight has for me, but it's heavier. And what a lot of guys don't think about, some guys, you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's a lot of weight up top on the top end of my bow. It's a lot of weight out front, which that right there, is enough for a lot of guys to distinguish, okay, I need some weight on the bottom to help balance it. But where that line of thinking, I find it stops for a lot of people, is the weight that's mounted to the side of your bow. Because this right here, my rest, my heavy sight, even if my quiver's on here, everything is on this one side of my bow. So putting this back bar on here, which a lot of hunters don't do, but I put this 8-inch back bar on here with 4 ounces on the back to not only counterbalance the heaviness out in front of my bow with this weight in the back, but also the left to right. Because when I come to full draw, and part of it's muscle memory, but then the other part of it is the weight of your bow. If I were to come to full draw with my eyes completely closed and I get everything settled in, I feel all my anchor points and stuff, I'm good to go, and I open my eyes and look through my peep, I should see that bubble perfectly in the middle. And that's what I look for when I'm rigging up a bow for myself. And if that bubble is leaning a little bit, then my first evaluation is, am I torquing my bow? Is my grip good? That's the first thing I think about, which it should be, right? That's the muscle memory part of it. But from there, then I start playing with my stabilizer. Then if it's leaning one way or another, maybe I need to bring it in a notch, bring it out a notch, whatever the case might be. And a little goes a long way with these back bars, but that's where that balance, that left to right, can really help. And then the top heaviness of the bow, yes, but having this weight behind my bow also helps me with that, and helps it from when I shoot. I personally, I've seen some guys that get like a full rotation out of their bow like this, right. Full rotation forward when they shoot, and they're cool with it. They like it. Cool with me. If that's what floats your goat, then great. I don't like that.
I don't think I would either.
When I shoot, the way I want my bow to behave is I want my bow just to kind of barely fall like this, just a light fall, and honestly, just I want it to either stay stable or even kick the bottom forward, depending on how I have it gripped. So when I have my bow gripped and I shoot, that thing should fall forward just barely like that for me, and that's what I look for in as far as when I rig my weights up. So
see, and mine doesn't move a whole lot as far as tilt.
Yeah,
it doesn't move a whole lot after I release, but that also again might be just me having to maintain control on that handle.
Well, and part of it too is, like, you look at the difference in my sight versus your sight as far as the distance that they're off the riser itself. Yeah. Yours being hubbed up, even if you took that lightweight sight and it was run out another 4 inches, you would experience a difference in how that bow behaves after you shoot.
So, and I bet your sight ring didn't fall off after a month of shooting it either.
It hasn't yet after 5 years of shooting.
I got that t-shirt. Check your bolts, folks.
So, and that's another thing, man, that I like about those micro adjusts too, is that on those sights, you can fine tune it like a rifle scope. You're not having to loosen a screw and slide it and then tighten it back down. You unlock it, twist it, lock it back.
You can't make a fine adjustment on that sight. You just got it's in the ballpark, and that's it.
I like too on this one, like I can take that sight, and if I haven't done it because I'm super picky and I don't like Sharpie on my bow, but if you really wanted to, you could take a Sharpie and mark those sights where it was, so if it ever gets bumped, it's a glance away to know if it's off or not. And then also with those dovetail systems, which the dovetail being the bracket right here that it mounts to the bow, if I'm like packing up, if I'm going on a trip or something like that, I take that screw out, I can take this whole sight off my bow and not have to worry about it getting jostled around, package it up all nice and neat somewhere, and when we get where we're going, put it back on, screw it into number 3 right there, and I know I'm good to go. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, this sight's definitely the next major upgrade that I'm going to put on it. But yeah, like I said, it's probably not going to happen this year just yet. We'll deal with the one that got me where I'm at so far for another year. And I mean, you've seen the backyard. It's short range. It's not like I'm shooting 40, 50 yard targets out there. It's 25 to 30 max. And beyond that, you're shooting into oak trees. So we're not doing that anyway.
Well, whenever you have a long distance capable rig, I will for sure expose you to the realm of long distance archery shooting, because even if you don't hunt that way, it's addicting, man. Just being able to drop an arrow into a little circle at 80 yards is just, there's no feeling like it, man. It's incredible.
Well, even stretching out to the top of the driveway, which, you've seen how my driveway is laid out. If I go up almost to where the gravel is for the garden up there, if I'm standing right there and I'm shooting down towards the end of the concrete, that's set off to the side of the house, if I shoot that's 50 yards. Yeah. And when I finally, it was like a month and a half, almost 2 months, I finally got the courage to go out to 50. And I started sighting in that third pin. I was like, ooh, I hit it.
I did it.
That was nice. That was nice. I'm not doing that again. So it kind of freaked me out. I hit it, but I was like, was that a one-off? Yeah. And so then I moved back and, I go back to 40, 35, 40, started working that again. All right, cool. So that wasn't a fluke. So I went back out to 50 and I shot a couple more and I sunk those in there. And I mean, for what I was doing at the time, I mean, I'm a month and a half, 2 months into it, and on a bow that I have no idea how I'm doing anything on it. I was shooting a small dinner plate. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I just got to tighten this up. I'm on now. I just got to tighten it up. I got to figure out, what are the little things I'm doing? Is it just the slop in the bow? Is it the slop in the side? Is it the slop in me? What do I need to clean up? Yeah. So. And then the season started, and I never shot 50 again because I was busy. So
that's how it goes.
That's where I left it. Well, but I can hit 50.
Like I mentioned, like you made big strides for sure in your first year, and I mean already shooting, just flinging arrows at 50 and grouping them like you were, in that short period of time is pretty impressive. So like anything, you put your mind to it, you put your reps and your practice to it, and you see results, Yeah. So
well, and that was the big thing. It's like, well, if these guys are shooting 80 arrows, then I'm going to shoot 20 a day. So, I mean, I'm not shooting elk, and I don't have, a $4,000, setup and, an entire complex where I can set up an archery range in my backyard and, the freedom of movement to spend 3 hours out there every single day. I don't have all that, but I got, a half hour in the morning when I come home from work. So, yeah. You put in what you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it comes down to. And to the topic of today, as far as where mindsets and mentalities need to be this time of year, and that's what it is, Everybody's busy, everybody's doing stuff in the spring and the summer, and, now kids are out of school too, so stuff just got crazier. But, finding that 15, even if it's just that 15, 20 minutes, whatever a day, sometime to go out there and just fling a few, it's good for the reps and good for the mind too. So,
well, and you also have to take care of the stuff you're going to be flinging arrows at in the fall too.
Exactly.
So, which is easier said than done, considering we've been getting rain every 2 days.
I'm not complaining about the rain, because last year was rough without it.
Oh, so we were cooked last year by now.
Yeah, if we can keep this up, I'll be perfectly okay with it. I'll take the little challenges that it comes with as far as when you get out there to do stuff. So, but, well, man, do you have any questions or anything you want to hit on as far as your setup, or what anything on your mind?
One of the things that I was kind of bound and determined to do, and this is it kind of happened after I got to know you a little bit and realized that you did the podcast and stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna put a camera on that thing.
Yeah.
So, and I had this old Contour from my deployment time. So this thing, was on my helmet in Afghanistan, this little camera right here.
Dang.
So that was mounted to the side of my helmet in Afghanistan. So this thing has been through a lot.
Yeah.
And now it is taking video anytime I draw back. So
That's pretty cool.
Basically, it's just part of the process now. So I'm down, and I'll knock the arrow in, and as soon as I see the target that I'm after, this thing's just kind of sitting up on my leg, on my thigh, and see something that I'm going to put down, just flick that forward and the drawback side picture and let her go, which I'll give you that video too.
Yeah.
Because I got the one from last year.
Cool.
It's pretty dark because it was nice and cloudy that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very cloudy, and it was early morning light, so there wasn't an abundance of light out there. I mean, I could see, but what you see in person with your own eyes versus what you can see on a camera lens are two very, very different things.
Yeah.
So if you do post that video, just everybody understand, it was legal light. It looks really dark, but it was legal light.
That's the thing, and I feel like most people that watch a lot of hunting shows, that they understand, and it's a frustrating point for some producers as well, because you can have one of the greatest cameras that there is out there to film your hunts with, and you are going to lose filming light, or any sort of decent filming light for sure, before you lose legal shooting light. And I've watched plenty of videos. I have never been in that position, mainly because I never put myself in that position, because I'm not that hardcore, I guess. But I've seen plenty of videos where guys, like a hunter's got a deer in his sights, but they just lost camera light and he doesn't shoot him because he's producing a top-notch high-end show. Which, okay, yeah, your job is to kill that deer on camera.
Right.
So you're not doing your job if you take that shot. I don't have that level of commitment. I will. Our folks on Texas Dirt have seen it. I will shoot a deer and then apologize for not getting it on film.
Well, part of it is they're doing it. That's their job. I mean, yes, this is your job too. But I mean, the other aspect of it is you're still very heavy into I'm going to eat what I kill, and I'm not going to sacrifice that opportunity to get this one that's going to fill the freezer versus
Yeah, it's like my 2018 pronghorn hunt. I was self-filming in that blind when that thing walked out at 41 yards, and I was my mind's already going a mile a minute because I got a Pope and Young pronghorn standing in front of me. But I turned the camera like where I thought he was going to walk, and I should have turned it just a little bit more. So I ended up not getting the shot itself. Like, you see him walk through the frame, and as soon as he gets out of the frame is when you hear that arrow fly. Yep. And then you see him run back up the hill with blood coming out of him. But still, looking back on the footage after the fact, I was like, "Oh man, come on!" But I wasn't mad about it either, because the reason I had just accomplished the reason I was up there,
right?
So.
And you can only do so much when it's one person back there. It's different if you got a videographer following you around and you got the whole crew and everything's everybody's manned and everything is manned. It's a different animal. Versus, I mean, even what we were doing out there in the dark, I'm just kind of along for the ride. I was like, I got a camera on my bow. And you're setting up tripods and all this stuff, and I was like, man, should I set I'll hang my phone from the tree.
Yeah, hang it up right there. Bring a clothes hanger.
No, I did bring my my video camera. It's like this, again, one of my deployment toys from 2004 and 2005 when I was over there. I had this. Oh man, it looks like a dinosaur. It's not one of those big shoulder-mounted ones, but it's just one of them little, the silver boxes, and you can put the DAT tape or whatever it is on one side, and it's got the SD card slot and all that stuff. A flip-out little, 2.5-inch screen or something. I had that, and I was like, well, I guess if we really, really are desperate, it does have an IR light on it though. So I was like, if we're really desperate for something, or maybe just like the walk-up, stuff, trying to track something down or whatever, we could have used that. But yeah, I brought what meager equipment I had too, and just to try and help out. But yeah, it's definitely different when you're doing it yourself. I mean, even sitting in there trying to, it's like, okay, calm down. You got to turn your camera on first before you draw back, and then don't yank it back because you'll make noise. So you got to kind of chill yourself out a little bit there too. Because I mean, I was only 26 yards away from these deer.
Yeah.
So maintaining self-control when you're doing something for the first time by yourself, nonetheless, is, they're very different.
Yeah. We, in actually one of the last episodes of Texas Dirt that we published this year was when I shot that little spike buck out there. And the edit obviously doesn't show it just because you keep things moving when you edit a production. But I had that deer in front of me for like almost 10 minutes probably before I finally shot him. And it wasn't because I was just, half of that was probably because I was waiting, because the day before I had him on camera with a mature buck. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to see if they had split up yet or if they were still together. But then after 5 minutes went by and I was like, I'm going to start preparing myself to make a move on this buck. The next 5 minutes were purely just me getting everything set.
Right.
Like making sure the camera is good, making sure I got my bow and have everything squared. Not letting this deer know that I'm there because he's 20 yards away and there's no wind and everything's still and quiet, and I got to be as still and quiet as I can as well. I mean, the game too, but it's self-filming is a whole nother ball game. So
even, I mean, and it goes back to the rifle thing. You're usually sitting back 100 yards, 125 yards away with the rifle, and you're just like, click. And then you just stop for a second. Like, oh, we didn't hear that. And he's 125 yards away, and it's like a little itty-bitty click. But it sounds...
In the blind that you're in, it
sounds like somebody just threw a firecracker behind you. Yeah. Because you're trying to be so quiet. And, and then you do it a couple times. You're like, oh, yeah, cool. So it's the first time thing, and it's amplified so much more when you're 25 yards away from something.
Yeah.
Because they can hear it at that point.
It's funny what deer react to and what they don't, for sure. I know I've talked about this on one of our video series probably a year ago now, but I have a friend of mine who talks about this experience he had. He was on a deer lease out west, and west is in Texas still. You can go pretty far west and still be in Texas, but only three guys on this 150-acre piece, and they all had it divided up like, this is your section, this is your section, this is my section. And he's the kind, does everything right, very cautious, thinks about, camo, entry points, like we do on everything. And his dad was one of the other guys, and then his other buddy was just the regular old, I'm a weekend warrior out here to drink beer and kill deer, like that was his mentality. And he has a video of, he described this to me, this big buck at night, middle of the night, this big buck standing in front of this dude's block or whatever he had out there in front of him. And in the background on the camera, you can see his stand, his box blind back there, and there's his truck parked next to his box blind with the headlights shining on the blind, and he is there vacuuming out his blind. God. And there's a big deer standing there, could care less. And I'm like, if I did that, every deer on my property would be gone and never come back. But this guy can do it. I was amazed. It was crazy.
I mean, that snaps me right back to that night out in the mule that night.
I was thinking,
I just didn't care.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, here's giant here, 6 coyotes behind me, and then shot a pig like an hour later.
Yeah, I killed my biggest. I've talked about it pretty recently on our podcast, but I killed my biggest deer in my life sitting on a ridge in blue jeans just because I got out there late that year or that day, and I didn't feel like walking down to a stand. So I just sat on a ridge, and what do you know? I shot my biggest buck of my life. So,
yeah, weird things happen when you just stop caring.
Absolutely.
Just for a second. Care too much, you're squeezing too tight.
Well, man, I enjoyed another conversation. It was a good podcast. You got anything else about your bow or your?
Not really. We just got to get out and do it now.
That's what it comes down to. So
yeah, it's there. I mean, I know it works with the way it's set up now, so it'll be good enough for another year, and then hopefully things will things will be calmed down a little bit, and
Yeah.
you know, we'll be able to move forward on some other things, and I can actually get some new toys for this. And by then too, I'm hoping my other half is getting into it too, because the idea was to get the small, you know, the 30-inch axle to axle.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier for her to manage.
Yeah.
Because vertically challenged people and whatnot. So that way she can have that one, and then I can get another nice, gigantic, expensive toy.
Well, I look
'Cause
forward.
why not?
Yeah, I know. I look forward to the journey for sure. I see it beginning to happen where, you know, you're gonna start upgrading your accessories on the bow that you have and everything, and then one day just all those nice accessories you've upgraded to are now going to be on a nice new shiny toy. So I look forward to watching it happen, and we'll obviously be sharing the story as it does. So it's been fun to watch. But
Yeah, we'll have some fun. And like I said, I mean, we got the 3 big ones in the backyard too, so you'll have to come down the trail and help us with that problem, since we've got the antler restrictions and all that good stuff here.
yeah,
So
I don't know.
it's going to be rough.
I have to pencil you in and check my schedule. You
It's
know,
tough.
going across the road to kill a deer. That's
It's a tough one.
I don't know if I can do that.
I'm just going to say it publicly, though. Demon's mine. You don't get to touch Demon.
I would expect nothing more.
He's my baby. I get to take that one
That's going to be one heck of a deer this year.
if he shows back up.
He'll be back. He made it through. He'll be back. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for listening, watching the video, whatever the case might be. If you didn't watch the video and you're listening on an app and you want to see all the visual references, then go check out the podcast video when it comes up on the YouTube channel. On that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button and turn those notifications on so that you get notified every time we drop a new video. Social media pages, all the ones that you guys know, including the TikToks. We are on the TikToks as well. Trying to stay on the TikToks, I guess I should say. That's just how I'll put it. Try not to draw any unnecessary attention to ourselves. Just posting some podcast clips, but go support us and give us a follow on there. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, be sure you like and subscribe, all that good stuff. We're on all major platforms, as well as YouTube, Carbon TV, and Waypoint TV. Go check out Mike's previous episodes. Him and I have had some pretty good conversations in the past. I believe 149, 150, I think, pretty recent, and then all the way back at 136, I think, are our previous conversations, sharing his journey from last year in more detail, that first one, and then we dove into some conservation and the dreaded P word, politics, on one of those, and then had a more lighthearted conversation about camouflage following that one. So
Excellent graphics on that one, by the way.
yeah, we tried to give some visual references on that one as well to some of the stuff we were talking about. It worked out pretty good. So anyway, go check out Fall Obsession. As always, fallobsession.com is where everything comes together. So go explore the website and see what you can find on there. We cover hundreds of different topics in the hunting and outdoor industry at this point. Finally, Ridge Rock Hunt Company, podcast partner, Derek and Lacey there in Mississippi. They book hunts with vetted outfitters across the country. If you're looking for that next bucket list hunt, dream hunt, whatever you got planned, and you want to schedule it through a vetted and trusted outfitter, give Derek a call. He'll work with you on timeline, pricing, licensing, all that good stuff, and get it figured out for you. Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Go check him out. Enjoy it again, man. Thank you.
Yeah, as always.
We'll do it again for sure. All right, guys. Thank y'all for listening. We're back again next week for another episode, and I'll catch you then.